Any questions?
Coach, after something like that happens, is there a message to the team?
Yeah, look, I just finished talking about it, and the hard part is not the injury itself. The hard part is the next 8 months where, as a player, you sit in that training room and you recognize that everything just keeps going. And that happened to me in 2011. As a coach, rarely does it happen. And, I had that fractured leg at Tampa Bay, and here I am in the training room and practice is going, and so it can be somewhat lonely, the recovery process. But he'll have the support of everyone here. Again, it was difficult for those guys to see, and fortunately we were able to reduce it and get him in. So I'll give you a little bit more update tomorrow when I know more. But again, he was doing well.
Especially a group like the offensive line, they took quite a while, and talking to the coaches and all that.
Yeah, sure. It's one of their teammates they're working with. He's a tremendous teammate and a guy that all he does is work his tail off, and the progress he made a year ago, and then all of a sudden we were just discussing the roster the other day, and he was easily for us, lineman 6, someone that was going to be involved, in the game plan and jumbo, and so it's it's tough to see that from one of their peers.
Well, then how, I guess, I know it's kind of next man up league, but what's that mean for the opportunities you got behind him because he looked like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's exactly what you said. We got to keep developing, keep working. We haven't gotten to our first preseason game yet, and keep evaluating.
With that in mind, historically, in your experience, how much weight do you put preseason games against these practices day to day?
Look, I think the preseason is important. So I don't want to say I'm old school, but 2 years ago we were last in the league with players injured and lost for the season. I think 130 some players missed games 2 years ago. Last year we finished first in the NFL with 34. So we're going to play our starters in the preseason. I think it's important to build a callus. I think it's important, and obviously you weigh the reps. And so when I say we're going to play them at week 1, it'll be a certain amount of snaps. Week 2, the same, and then we'll see where we're at week 3. But I think it's important. So we our guys, they know that, and we played them last year.
First of all, obviously with more team periods and more involvement today, how did you think
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the guy that jumped out was Josh Reynolds. I mean, shoot, he had 3 or 4 catches that were something else. I'll have a chance to look at the film and then, see how each one of those quarterbacks did. But, we had a heavy emphasis on third down. We had 2 periods devoted, exclusively to third down, as well as a pretty good portion of the walkthrough. So, that's where we're at.
Did you talk to Dan Campbell about Josh before you signed him?
Yeah, I didn't talk to Dan because, look, I have Johnny Moe here, and remember Johnny just finished coaching him in Detroit. So I kind of I didn't need to call Dan. But that's something I would have done, for instance, if not for having one of his coaches here.
What was Johnny's feedback on Josh?
It was good. It was real good. He's a tough player. He's got range. You saw today there were a number of 50-50 balls that he ended up with, and we had a good, clear vision for him, and I'm glad we have him.
When I talk to O-line and D-line over the last several days, they talk about toughness, wanting to be one of the toughest teams. Can you build that identity out here?
I think you can, and I think just as important is the mental toughness as well as the physical toughness. This game is certainly played in the trenches, but there's a mental element that's important relative to there's so many swings in a game, swings in a season that you have to establish that grit, if you will, and we look for players that have those traits in the very beginning of the process. because every team, I don't care who they are, they're going to have their swings during the course of the year, and so it's not how they're reacting when they're winning. Oftentimes, how they do coming off a tough loss or 2 losses. And back to the initial question, though, relative to inside the trenches, that's important, and I think that both sides of the ball are kind of committed to that. Winning the line of scrimmage and generally speaking, when we look at a tape afterwards, that's kind of where, barring turnovers, a lot of times the games are won and lost.
So when you signed Josh, you mentioned his production in the run game, despite the fact that he's maybe not the most physically in.
Yeah, he's long, he's smart, and so there's some versatility. I see him as an outside-in player, more outside than in, but his length. Well, you saw it. I mean, his catch radius is just bigger.
Coach, I think we're going to talk to Greg today. Is there a point where
Greg
Dawson shut up?
Yeah.
Is there a point where you stop thinking about, it's good to happen, and you're just like, let's just go?
Yeah, and look, I'm probably already there relative to. I'm not thinking. I'm watching him make progress and encouraged with how he's doing. And when I see him, I'm like, man, you're looking good. And but certainly, we'll do a preseason practice list where we'll have level 1, level 2, level 3 guys that we'll just give a day, and it be either a veteran player, like an older player, a player coming off an injury. And so I haven't thought that much about his injury past, and yet certainly we think about it when we're scripting and making sure we're counting his reps. So a lot of it is done ahead of time.
Sean, what has been your impressions of Jonah so far, and how does he fit in that?
He's right. Well, look, he's like all these young guys, he's getting the reps with the 2s or the 3s. It's going to be hard until we get into some, we're finally getting some one-on-one pass rush. We're getting, the pads are on this week, so the evaluation has just begun. But, we saw a lot of things we like on his college tape. And I think that once we get into the preseason here, I think in a week I'll probably have a little bit cleaner answer for you. But we're encouraged to work with him, and we feel like he can be a contributor. Especially when you draft someone that high. I mean, he's got good football makeup, really good IQ. I drafted his brother, Caden, in New Orleans. He's now in Atlanta, and yeah. So I would say that the feeling right now is real positive.
We saw Bowles in and out, just a few reps. Is that you just managing workload?
Yeah, I'm sure. I didn't even notice it, so nothing of significance.
What do you like about Peart? He was one of the guys who signed with free agency.
Yeah, he's long. He's big. He's certainly a guy that, when we watch the tape, there's certain strengths, and we felt like he's a candidate to come in. We're trying to find, hey, who's going to be the third tackle? So he's competing for that spot.
Where's Greg Dulcich at in the blocking aspect of his game?
Yeah, I would say he's probably a little behind, and yet there's still some things. When we drafted Jimmy Graham, I remember very well, Parcells called me and said, hey, don't worry if he can't block power or certain run. So there's certain things, Greg, we're going to ask him to do in the run game, and then there's certain things we're not going to ask him to do. And so, certainly I see him as a space player, a guy that can maybe give us matchup advantages, and then we'll be smart relative to what type of run schemes, the easy schemes where he's up on a safety, backside cutoff, backside, So there's certain run schemes that he'll be utilized more in than others.
Sean, Little Jordan had a few catches today.
Yeah.
What have you seen from him this training camp?
Yeah, he's smart and steady. Look, he came on last year really and played well for us. He's a big target. He's another big target with a great catch radius, a real big catch radius. I like him inside out, so different than Josh. Most of most of his snaps last year, if you took out, your breakdown, they would have come in the slot or in the inside receiver flex position. He's comfortable inside, working, in noise, and he has to be. He's a guy who's big, so his separation comes with his length, and the other thing is he can kind of go in and play all three positions. He picks things up real quickly.
I know you'll need to watch the tape for full clarity, but it's just your knee-jerk reaction to how Bo did today.
Yes, I was just asked it 2 seconds ago, and look, I thought overall, I'm sure there's going to be some plays we look at that it was mostly third down. A lot of the work was third down, but yeah, I mean, we'll see the tape and evaluate it. But I thought overall pretty well. I mean, there are plays where you're going to look at and correct, and then there's others where you're going to say, hey. But I do have to watch the film because I'm looking at so much, and he ran with the ones, and I like his progress.
Sean, I know CBA rules limit padded days. What do the next few days look like in the 50,000?
So we'll be in shells tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday? Yeah, and then pads, and then Saturday to be determined. And what we do Saturday with that practice, we still haven't shelled out yet. So we have to do Saturday's practice. I kind of have an idea what I want to do Saturday, but so tomorrow we'll be in the spider shells.